Good evening, and welcome to the Hooper-Renwick Speaker Series. My name is Kari Evans, and I'm the Deputy Director for the Gwinnett County Public Library. I bring greetings from our Executive Director, Charles Pace, who was not able to join us, but is very excited about our speaker series. I also want to recognize, and she's doing duty, Nessa Griffin, who is the Executive Director of our Gwinnett County Library Foundation and the Development Director for the library. And let's give her a hand to who put this together. Yeah. I'd also like to recognize our Library Foundation Board Chair, make sure I get that right, Aisha Treadwell. Is she in? There she is in the room. We have Randy Travis, our City of Lawrenceville Council member, and Victoria Jones, our City of Lawrenceville Council member and Library Foundation Board member. So we are especially honored to gather with you in our newly opened branch this year. Have you had a chance to walk around? Yes. It has been a meaningful new chapter for both our community and for this cherished program. I'd also like to begin by extending a heartfelt thank you to Peach State Federal Credit Union. They are the principal founding donor of the Hooper-Renwick Memorial Programming Fund and Endowment. So thank you so much. Because of your leadership and the generosity of so many others, this speaker series continues to thrive, celebrating the lives, achievements, and enduring legacy of those who attended Hooper-Renwick. The Hooper-Renwick speaker series features acclaimed, best-selling Black authors and local champions of racial equity. At its core, the series is designed to foster empathy and understanding among all of Gwinnett County's diverse residents. To understand the significance of this gathering, it is important to reflect on the school's history. Established in 1951, prior to desegregation, Hooper-Renwick School served Black students in grades 1 through 12 and was the only Black high school in Gwinnett County. Today, the 25,000 square foot Hooper-Renwick Library stands on this very site. This thoughtfully designed branch now serves the residents of Lawrenceville and Gwinnett County, preserving and sharing the Hooper-Renwick story for generations to come. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Connie Brown, Chair of the Hooper-Renwick Legacy Preservation Committee, who will bring to the stage our local voices, individuals whose stories, experiences, and leadership continue to shape and strengthen our community. Connie is a native Gwinnetian, one of the members of the Hooper-Renwick Legacy Committee, who worked in conjunction with the city and county to preserve Hooper-Renwick. She's a retired Gwinnett County school educator and attended Hooper-Renwick during her primary matriculation, and she does extensive work with several municipal projects. So please join me in welcoming Connie.
Y'all don't understand. Good evening. Everybody's talking about Hooper-Renwick, Hooper-Renwick, Hooper-Renwick. I heard someone yesterday giving herself a place in the preserving of this great edifice, and that's okay. Because the real credit for the continued existence of this edifice lies in the prayers of our ancestors and our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Also, last evening, my sorority, the Mu Epsilon Sigma chapter of Sigma Gamma Rho Incorporated, received a humanitarian award by Mrs. Ann LaFavor, whose organization is the Family Gwinnett. And that further helped me to see that we all play a part in the perseverance of God's humanity. To God be the glory for Hooper-Renwick. As we continue to celebrate Hooper-Renwick, a concept called Building Bridges was initiated in its honor. For my understanding, the initiative is to keep all communities connected in all ways, particularly socially and academically. And because the premise is Hooper-Renwick, a place that was first loved by Black Americans of Gwinnett County, I believe that we would be remiss if we did not include voices that originally came out of the belly, the bowels of Hooper-Renwick. I want to thank Nessa for allowing me to invite and include who I refer to as Hooper-Renwick royalty. I'm looking around, and I did ask Mrs. Wilma Ruth Jones Sumhour to join us. She was a graduate of Renwick High School. You got to do your homework. In 51. She's not here, but I want to call her name because she is 90-ish years blessed, and she's doing well, but she's not here. Also, in his absence is Mr. Andrew Maxey. I don't see him either. Mr. Andrew was a graduate of the class of 1956, along with the incomparable Miss Ruby Wilbur Neal, who is here. Class of 1956. Ruby's a staple in our community. I know y'all have heard her name. And in that same class was Mary Dean Eccles Kendrick, who also couldn't be here, but we will be favored to hear from her daughter in a little while. So tonight we will hear from Jerry Hutchins, Bishop Jerry Hutchins. He started his academic matriculation during the era of segregation here at Hooper-Renwick. Bishop Hutchins was a classmate of mine. We determined that we were both in Miss Kemp's first grade class. And I don't know about, Miss Kemp was my favorite teacher. I tell people all the time, I'm as smart as I am because Miss Kemp was my teacher. I think that probably is something relative about that. When Hooper-Renwick closed its doors, Bishop Hutchins left Hooper-Renwick and went on into the South Gwinnett cluster, where he graduated from South Gwinnett. He received his bachelor's degree from Beulah Heights University and his Master of Arts in Christian Education and Divinity from Luther Rice Seminary. Jerry is married to Mrs. Sheila Hutchins since 1975, and to that union they were blessed with one daughter, Keisha, one son-in-law, Patrick, and one granddaughter, Brittany. Bishop Hutchins has authored books of his own, and he's pastored many churches, but he currently pastors Kingdom Now Ministries, which he founded in 2008. We look forward to hearing from Bishop Hutchins. Now, while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Renata. Renata Dean Kendrick Cooper. While Renata is not a graduate or an attendee of Hooper-Renwick, she is a legacy. Her mother, Mary Dean Eccles Kendrick, was an honor graduate also of the class of 1956. Renata herself is a graduate of Benjamin E. Mays in Atlanta, Georgia. Class of 1982, of which she was the valedictorian. Renata entered Emory University, where after 4 years, she received her bachelor's and master's degree simultaneously in English. And in 1989, she received her Juris Doctorate. She also met her husband, attorney James Cooper, to which the union was blessed with twins, James Kendrick and Carter Dean, both of whom are pursuing their law degrees. Can you say family business? Renata and James reside in Washington, D.C., where Renata recently retired. This is a mouthful. She recently retired from the position of Executive Assistant United States Attorney for External Affairs at the United States Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia. A legacy of Hooper-Renwick. Now I will set aside my comments about Mary Dean Eccles Kendrick, who was my first choice for addressing us tonight, but because she is a graduate of this school. And I will defer to Renata to make those comments about her. But I will say that Mary Dean's husband, Reverend James Kendrick, Renata's father, is here with us tonight. And I'm told he is a pastor of East Friendship Baptist Church in Athens, Georgia, for 65 years. I don't know how many years Reverend Kendrick and Dean have been married, but I do know this. I'm a very senior citizen. And I was a flower girl at about 5 years old in their wedding. That's a long time. Now, to the union of Reverend Kendrick and Dean, they also, along with Renata, have a son, Alan, who serves as Associate Dean at Duke University. So we look forward to hearing from this legacy, Renata Cooper, who stands in the gap for her mother, Mary Dean Eccles Kendrick, Hooper graduate of 1956. So the next voices you will hear will be Bishop Jerry Hudgens and Renata Kendrick Cooper.
Greetings to you all. Thank you, Connie, for that introduction. I am honored to be here tonight, and Connie and this whole committee has taken a serious risk. They've asked a preacher to talk for 5 minutes. I don't know that I've ever done that, but I'll do my best. Let me just say, it's not easy to live almost 7 decades and then be asked to search the files of your mind and pull out a folder labeled the first decade. That's what I've been asked to do tonight. I was likely afforded the privilege of attending Hooper-Renwick during the first 10 years of my life, from age 5 to age 10. And they want me to expound upon the impact that that had on my life. When you get close to 70, remembering those years is not quite as easy as it seems. But since being asked to attend this event, I did search my memory, and until now, I had never really stopped to analyze the impact that those years had on me. I searched and I was thinking, and I said, wow, the impact that Hooper-Renwick had on my life is really tremendous. Because I was at Hooper-Renwick for the first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade. Now, my 5th and 6th grades were a little different because the 5th grade classroom was overcrowded. So instead of being in a traditional 5th grade classroom, I was placed in a 6th grade classroom. But I was told that I was going to do 5th grade work. But they never gave me a 5th grade textbook. Whatever the teacher taught to those 6th graders, he expected me to know it also. I was never taught 5th grade work. And I don't clearly remember who the teacher was, but I think it was Mr. Terrell. But what I do remember is how I felt in that classroom, 9 years old, everybody else 10 and 11. But I was being stretched. I couldn't just ease into it. There was no gradual transition. I was learning 6th grade material, whether I was ready or not. And at the end of that school year, I remember the teachers calling my mother or talking to my mother, whether they called or not, I don't know, but they had a meeting with my mother to discuss whether or not I was going to go on to the 7th grade because I had been doing 6th grade work and I was the smartest one in the class. So they asked her if I would go on to 7th grade or should I repeat the 6th grade since that was not the class I was supposed to be in the first place. So my mother said, send him on to 7th grade. And just like that, I had never had 5th grade work. And looking back now, I realized something that I didn't understand until you all asked me to speak tonight. Because that experience shaped my life. It taught me how to adjust quickly. It taught me how to rise to expectations and to eliminate excuses. It taught me that sometimes life places you ahead of schedule, and you have to decide whether you're going to shrink back or grow into it. I didn't choose the overcrowding. I did not choose the placement, but I played the hand I was dealt, and I bloomed where I was planted. And when I look back now, I recognize that experience set me on a pace for the rest of my life. It set a momentum, a pace, a fast pace. And I've always done things ahead of schedule. And it's because of what happened there at Hooper-Renwick. Even in my teen years, I was referred to as an old man in a teen's body. I was driving at age 15. My mother actually allowed me to drive. I didn't have a license, but she let me drive from Lilburn, Georgia to Tucker, Georgia. That was the only place I could go because there was a certain girl that my mother liked. She let me drive at age 15 to go see Sheila, who is now my wife after 50 years. So I was driving at 15. I graduated high school at 16. I was a daddy at 17. Married at 18, you figure it out. I stepped into responsibility early. I turned 18 in July of '75, and as soon as I turned 18, I married the girl who had my baby. So there we were, 18 and 17, married with a 6-month-old baby. So my life has often been on a fast track. But maybe Hooper-Renwick was just preparation. It was not so much a fast track, it was the preparation that it gave me. I learned a lot in that classroom where I took 6th grade lessons at 9 years old. That meeting where my mother had to decide whether or not I went on to the next grade, that decision to step into the 7th grade instead of repeating what I'd already conquered, that was preparation for my life. That class that taught me in Hooper-Renwick, it was teaching me that life does not always slow down and wait on you. You got to speed up and move at its pace. So my 5 minutes are up. That class that taught me the most at Hooper-Renwick was my 5th grade. The grade I most remember is my 5th grade. My 5th grade teacher, my 5th grade classmates, the ones I never had. Sometimes the years that you skip teach you more than the years you sit through. And for that, I will always be grateful to Hooper-Renwick. Because long before I understood where I was going, Hooper-Renwick was quietly shaping me into becoming the man that I am. Thank y'all for listening. I could preach that if y'all let me.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Renata Dean Kendrick Cooper, and I'm very pleased to be here tonight to speak on behalf of my mother, Mary Dean Eccles Kendrick, who couldn't be with us. She had hand surgery on Thursday. She's recuperating very well, but she's still coming off of some of the effects of propofol after the surgery. And I know that if she had been here, she would have had a lot of historical information to provide you about Lawrenceville and Hooper-Renwick High School. But I will stand here in her stead and speak to you, I hope fairly quickly and extemporaneously, from a different sort of perspective. In Ken, our featured novelist tonight, and I guess before I say this, as a former federal prosecutor, I feel it incumbent upon me, in case her agent is out in the audience, to say that I neither am a speed reader, having been handed the book tonight, nor was I given an embargoed copy in advance. I know this because I heard her interviewed recently on NPR. But she speaks in Ken about the fact that the heart grows strings. I want to talk about those strings that attach us, those strings that connect us. So I am the great-granddaughter of Mary Thomas Eccles Haygood, who was married to John Eccles, and they gave birth to my grandfather, Floyd Dean. You hear that name again, resounding through the ages. Floyd Dean Eccles. And he and my grandmother, Ruth Paxton Eccles, are the parents of my mother, Mary Dean Eccles Kendrick. Now, what you should know is, for me driving up, this was amazing because my grandfather's house sat right across the street from the school. Right across the street. And so I was just fascinated, not only by the stories about my mother attending this school, but actually more so about her little brother, Marvin. We called him Beat. But Uncle Beat apparently was late for school every day, and all he had to do was cross the street. But in any event, my mom lived right across the street from the school, and I think as you've already heard, she was a valedictorian of Hooper-Renwick's 1956 class. I went on, as I hear some of my alums from Benjamin E. Mays High School back in the back, went on to be the valedictorian of the first graduating class of Benjamin Mays High School in 1982. But now I'll back up again because I want to talk about some more interesting strings. As we were going through the museum for the first time and my cousin Connie was showing us around, she and I both were a little amazed that my father, who's from Warrenton, Georgia, right outside of Augusta, happened to know a lot about this place. But one of the things that I'm happiest about, because I would otherwise not be here, is the fact that he, as a very young preacher, was following a man, Reverend James A. Wilburn, who was in revival, I think, at Pleasant Hill Baptist Church. And as my dad tells it, and they will celebrate their 63rd wedding anniversary in April, but as he tells it, he looked over and he saw that young pianist on the piano, and they've been married for 63 years now. So I'm so very happy for that. Moving forward, what I think is most interesting are the strings that attach my family to the author tonight, some strings that I'm not even sure she's aware of. So first of all, we are attached because, again, I went to Benjamin E. Mays High School. She would later attend that high school. And the funniest thing about that is that just a couple of years ago, actually it was more than that because it was before COVID, my husband, who is a partner at Arnold and Porter, he was at the time, he's retired now and has taken senior counsel status, was asked if he would interview a novelist who had been on the Oprah's book list, and it turned out to be Tayari Jones. He called me and he said, "My God, you must know this woman. You're the same person. She went to Mays High School." And I was like, "I don't know this woman." And I thought for a moment, is she an imposter? So I called my baby brother. He's 5 years younger than I, but 6 years below me in grade school. And he said, "Oh, you wouldn't have known her. She would have been a baby to you because you remember you were always talking about her little brother?" So my brother is 6 grades behind me, which means that Tayari's older brother, who was a baby to me in high school, just because maybe he was 4 years younger than me, is Patrice Lumumba Jones, who played the trumpet. So I was like, yes, I remember Lumumba. So we have that connection and the fact that how ironic it would be that my husband would have been asked to interview her about an American marriage many years ago. Additionally, you have heard that I went to Emory University, both undergrad, grad, and law school, which is where I met my husband. But it is so interesting that the connection there is also that Tayari Jones is now a professor at Emory University. And that is so lovely to hear at a time when, even at Emory, I think you all are aware, there was an announcement that they would no longer be promoting their DEI programs. So it is more important than ever that you have teachers like Tayari Jones there to show that you can achieve, creative writing. You can become a nationally, globally recognized author, and that's very important. The other thing I wanted to say about that is that strikes me as very interesting because until she met Pearl Klieg, who was also, I believe, a classmate of my mother at Spelman College, which is another connection, she seems not to have been aware that you could even take classes in creative writing. So for her to have achieved what she has and to be at a place like Emory University here in Atlanta and in Georgia is especially important. I think we probably have a lot of Spelmanites out there. So I love that connection. My mother is a graduate of the Spelman class. Daddy, is it of 1962? 1963. And so she and Tayari Jones are sisters as well. And so I won't take up any more of your time, but I think it's important to talk about those strings that connect us, that are, I would add, and perhaps she did not mean this, that are heartstrings. Heartstrings are those things that figuratively, metaphorically vibrate deep within us, things that tickle emotions and memories. And so I think that that is really important for us to think about connections and memory as we talk with her and listen to her tonight, as I think that that is a big part of her latest novel, Ken. Also interesting is the fact that you all are doing this and having speakers who are primarily talking about history. And that is especially important, as I believe that this is actually her first historical novel. She has not deemed herself an historical novelist. And so I think it's so important and significant and ironic in some sense that you're doing this here tonight in this context. So thank you so much.
I just want to thank Bishop Jerry Hutchins and Renata for coming forward and making that connection. What is interesting about Hooper-Renwick and the connection that they made is that a lot of people say that Hooper-Renwick and schools like Hooper-Renwick were operating on less than proper resources. They didn't have a lot of resources. But what they had, what Hooper-Renwick and other schools like Hooper-Renwick had, were teachers who cared, teachers who poured their all into their students. And as you can see, the finished product, okay? And I just want to say that because it's important and it's special. So thank you all. Thank you both.
Wow. Oh, wow. Thank you for sharing your powerful stories. It was an honor to hear them, to be able to, and Miss Connie Brown, thank you. It is truly an honor to welcome tonight's featured author, Tayari Jones, and we've heard a little bit about her. Thank you, Renata, for sharing some of those stories. But Tayari, an acclaimed novelist whose work has profoundly shaped contemporary American literature. Tayari Jones is the award-winning author of 4 novels, including Leaving Atlanta, The Untelling, Silver Sparrow, and the widely celebrated An American Marriage, which was selected for Oprah's Book Club and won the Women's Prize for Fiction. Her storytelling is marked by emotional depth, moral complexity, and an unflinching exploration of love, injustice, family, and the intricate bonds that hold us together and sometimes pull us apart, those heartstrings. Through her work, she invites us to examine the intimate human impact of larger social forces, always grounding sweeping themes in beautifully rendered, deeply human characters. Her voice is both tender and fearless, and her novels linger long after the final page. Tonight, she will be discussing her newest book, Kin, which I think everybody in here has a copy. They've got it, you're ready. A powerful and timely exploration of family connection, and belonging across generations. Joining her in conversation this evening is the incomparable Condace Pressley, a respected journalist, community leader, and gifted interviewer whose thoughtful and engaging style creates space for meaningful dialogue, and we are fortunate to have her guiding tonight's discussion. So please join me in warmly welcoming Tayari Jones in conversation with Condace Pressley.
Well, hello, everyone. Hello. We are so ready to have this conversation.
I am.
Are you really?
I am. I'm always glad to be home.
Exactly. And we're gonna go straight into the story behind the story. You have written stories, novels that stay with us, the reader, long after that final page. When did you first know that Ken was the story that you were meant to tell at this moment in your life and in your career?
Well, this actually isn't the book that I was supposed to write. I had a contract to write an entirely different book, entirely different subject, entirely different era. And I still think it's a good idea, and I hope I can write it at a later date. But this book that I had this idea to write was about modern Atlanta, and it was looking at like the question of gentrification, and can you gentrify your own neighborhood? And I think the answer to that is like kinda. And so I wanted to write about that, but the book, it wasn't happening. Like as my students would say, like the book wasn't booking. It just wasn't, it didn't have that intangible thing that lets you know you're on the right track. And I didn't know what to do. I was like several years late on my contract. And so I just—
And they let you do that?
What can they do? I think they know that nobody wants the book to be done as much as I do. So if I don't have it, it must not be there. And so I just took out a notebook and a pencil, not even a pen, a pencil. And I just started scribbling around, and I started writing about these two girls growing up in the 50s. And I thought, that's weird, okay. Because while I do believe myself to contain multitudes, I do not believe myself to contain a historical novel. That is not what I do. And I was doing it. So I said, these girls must be the parents of my real characters. So I was just patiently waiting on my real characters to get born. And when I got about 150 pages in, I realized that this wasn't a backstory, this was the story.
For someone who is just discovering Ken, which came out on Tuesday.
So as in everybody.
As in everybody. How do you describe it? No plot, no spoilers here beyond what you've already shared, but the emotional experience that you are taking us on.
I think you have to talk about plot, though. It's a story of two girls who've known each other since they were infants. Neither of them has a mom, but the circumstances in which they don't have a mom is different. One mother died when she was just a baby, was killed actually, and the other mother abandoned her. But they grew up as these two motherless girls reared by women who took them in, family members who took them in, but for whom this wasn't their first choice life. And they get to know each other and they grow up and their lives go in really different directions. One comes to Atlanta to attend Spelman College, and the other one goes on a wild adventure to Memphis to try to find her biological mother.
So once you said you were 150 pages in and realized this isn't the backstory, this is the story, what then drew you into exploring womanhood through their experience?
I feel like the question of what drew me, I can't even answer that. I feel like writing a novel in many ways, it's like being in love. You know, when you're in love, you believe that everything you do is motivated by something mysterious, your heart. You just do it because you just have to. The heart wants what it wants, right? And then when you're no longer in love, you can look back on it and be like, oh, that was my daddy issues. And I feel like with this book, when I was writing it, it just all seemed very mysterious to me. I've never been that kind of person to say, you know, I was always suspicious of those writers who say, oh, you know, it just came to me, you know, I dreamed it. I'm like, oh, stop it. You're just trying to seem interesting. But that's how it happened to me. But when I look back on it, I think that I moved home to Atlanta 8 years ago because I wanted to get to know my parents as adults. And I think I had the fantasy, you know, there's a moment when Niecy, one of my characters, her Aunt Irene tells her, you know, pours her a drink and says, we're gonna sit down and talk like two grown women. I think that's my fantasy that my mama would say, we're gonna talk like two grown women. That is not my mama's fantasy at all. And so I think maybe I let my imagination fill in those blanks for all the stories that no one would tell me.
Your characters are never simple.
No.
They're never simple heroes, they're never simple villains, and they feel deeply human. I feel like I know these women, or I've known these women. Why is it important for you to write people with moral complexity? Because when I read your work, and I'm sure you all are the same way, I find myself in the character will do something, I was like, girl, why you do that? You know better. And I wonder if that's your experience as the creator as well.
No, I like characters that feel like they live in the world, not like they live in a book. I don't like to read books where the characters act as though they know we're watching and they want to perform for us. I like characters that feel just like real people, and they make real mistakes, but they also do, I think, make grand gestures of love toward the people they care about. And that's just how I feel like if you want to hear a story, for me, when I want to read a story, I want to read a story that feels realistic. And particularly with this book being set in the 50s and 60s, I feel like there's all manner of life that absolutely took place in that time period that people didn't talk about then, but we can talk about it now. So that's just kind of how I just kind of got in there. And I don't think the people in this story make a lot of bad decisions. You think so?
Not a lot of bad.
Judgy.
And again, friend, thank you for inviting me to be here with you tonight. So when these characters are coming out of you and you think you're going to take the story one way and they take you in a different direction, talk to me about how that happens.
I can't tell you how it happens. That's
but
what
it
I'm
does
saying.
happen, right?
Yes, but the best way I can explain it is, have you ever been around somebody? I teach undergraduates. Have you ever been around people telling you a lie? Like, they have a lie to tell, because the point of the lie is, you know, they don't have their work. And so they come up, I don't have my work because there was a smoke alarm went off in the dorm. And it went off and we had to go outside, and we were all standing outside and we couldn't go back in. Well, I was going back in, but then my roommate had a dog, and the dog wasn't even supposed to be in there, and then we had to find the dog, and then we had to bring the dog back. And by the time to bring the dog back, there wasn't time to use the printer, and you know, like that. Like, I just made that lie up. I don't know where that lie came from. I just made it up. And we all do that. Telling a story is a lot like the spontaneity of a lie. You just keep building on details to match the details you have. And everyone does it. It's just that when people sit down to write, it's like they put aside their real mind and they want to use a writing mind. And the writing mind doesn't know how to write a novel. But your real mind does. It's like I tell my students, all the techniques of storytelling you use every day, you tell stories. If someone says, what did you do this weekend? You tell them, oh, I went out and I saw this person. And then you say, okay, let me back up and tell you who he is. That's flashback. And so you automatically use those techniques, but it's just when people sit down to write, they think, oh, I don't know how to write.
And that is then their perceived block, which is they shouldn't be thinking like that.
Well, I would say they could be released from it. It's not a helpful way to think, but I get it, because the way that we were taught to write in school was like, this is writing language as opposed to talking language. You know how sometimes they say, oh, you're not supposed to write like you talk. And I think that when they tell people, only people who are told you shouldn't write like you talk are people whose language is stigmatized in society. And so then you feel like, oh, you can't access your real voice to write. And then that's a lot to ask. It's almost like you're being asked to write in another language.
Ken is your the second, not the second, but it's as we've all learned this week, an Oprah Book Club selection.
Yes.
After An American Marriage. I don't know if everyone here knows, but tell us about how you found out that your book had been chosen.
Well, one thing that we all know about Oprah, what is Oprah's favorite thing to do? Surprise people, right? So Oprah loves to roll up on you. So I was minding my business. I had gone to New York. We were having a little bit of trouble because we were kind of tussling over the cover. And I had kind of performed, I won't say a fit, I would say,
The building of the lie.
I was vocally displeased with the cover. And then I decided, oh, these people are gonna think I'm crazy because this is a new publisher for me. I said, let me go on up to New York and show them how sane I am. So I went up there prepared to be as friendly as possible. And so I went up there and I was talking about the cover and I was being super friendly, like, oh, I love the new cover. I'm so glad. And I felt like nobody was paying attention to me. And I thought, maybe I'm not being friendly enough. So I got a little friendly. I was complimenting people's shoes and stuff. And then they said, oh, you have a guest. And I turned around thinking it was someone I had worked with previously in publishing. And there was Oprah. But I thought she was coming to say hi because we had worked together before. So I said, oh, hi. And she said, hi. And I was like, oh, I'm in New York because I have a book coming out. She was like, I know. And then we went from there. But I felt like I felt like I should have been jumping up and down, but I just misunderstood, and that's how it happened.
So Oprah chooses books that spark conversation and reflection. What conversations are you hoping that families, friends, book clubs are going to be having after they read this story?
I hope this book kind of sparks some intergenerational conversation because a lot of the issues that we talk about in this book, like I said, are things our mothers never told us about. There are issues of sexuality. There's, the question of contraception, marriage, like all these things that people of our mother's generation didn't know to get in the weeds with us. And I don't think we can really appreciate the wisdom of the previous generation if they won't tell us nothing. And so you could use the book to talk about, your mama don't have to tell you about herself. She can just talk about the book and people can communicate across that. And I also want to think about, as one thing that kept coming back to my mind when I was working on this book is the issue in the 1950s, like researching the 50s, just how different life was for women, and especially Black women in the 50s, and this kind of challenge between the allure of respectability and how this idea of being a respectable wife was, Black women had been deprived of that. And so many of them kind of ran toward that, life like this. One woman, her desire is to be a 1950s housewife. And I feel in many ways when it comes to that respectability, generationally, it's like we are what's the expression? The dog that caught the postman. Yes. Like people wanted that respectable life, and then we have all woke up and realized we're trapped in a box. And I want to talk about that also.
There are parts of this story, especially Niecy's story, that take us to places around Atlanta that your readers are going to recognize. You're a Spelman College alum.
I am. Come on, y'all.
Come on.
Ladies.
Ladies. That was your shout out, yes.
One of many, don't worry.
Many. How did Spelman help shape not just your education, but your confidence as a writer and as a thinker? Because I'll leave it there.
Everyone who knows me even a little bit knows I'm a graduate of Spelman College, and I studied with Pearl Clegg. And she was my writer. She was a writer, and she was my teacher. And she asked me a simple question, which was, she said, what are you thinking about? And I got ready to tell her, and she said, no, don't tell me, write it down. And in that, she took me seriously, and because of that, I took myself seriously. But what I did not know about Spelman College until I was researching this book was I didn't know about the proud, strong, working class history of Spelman College. People talk about Spelman like it's some kind of debutante factory. And I think that what it is that they look at the graduates of Spelman and they imagined those adult people miniaturized, just as they are now, as students, and this must have been like what they must have been like when they came here. But so many young people came from small towns across the South with whatever money their family could put together. I know a woman who's an alumna who's 97 years old. She came to Spelman College with every cent her community could come up with in a stocking. And it was given to the president of Spelman, and Mrs. Reed poured the money out of the stocking, returned the stocking because she knew the young woman needed her other stocking, and said to her, "You should stay in the dormitory." She had never heard the word. And now she's, quite a proper lady. She's got a PhD in Shakespeare. And people look at her and imagine, oh, this is what she must have been like her whole life. I think people look at the private HBCUs here in Atlanta as serving the middle class, serving the Black elite, but really these institutions created a middle class. That Atlanta is a Black Mecca because of our HBCUs.
And the city very much is present in your storytelling, sometimes explicitly, sometimes spiritually. What does the city of Atlanta give to you as a creative writer?
I moved to New York because that's where publishing is. And one day I was in a coffee shop and I looked around the coffee shop and I saw all these major American writers. Everyone was having coffee, everyone was having the same breakfast. And I thought, we've come to New York from different cities, different countries, but we're all having the same breakfast. And it's only a matter of time before we start writing the same book. And that's when I knew that as an artist, I needed to get back home to this city that inspires me. When I first started writing about Atlanta, in my early writing, I wrote a book about growing up in Atlanta during the Atlanta child murders. And I did not know, one, how many people had never heard of this, since it was so central to my life. And Atlanta is the kind of place where you can live here and not know what other people think of you, because you live in this kind of safe space. And so then I was kind of writing, in some ways I started writing because people didn't know who we were here. And I felt like I was kind of representing the city in a different kind of way. But now I'm interested in kind of peeling back the layers and looking more closely at the contradictions and thinking of ways that we can improve.
How does it influence your thoughts on the city that is, influence your thoughts about identity and community? Especially since you just said there's so many contradictions that you want to write about.
I mean, the thing about identity, when I was a child, I did not believe that Black people were a numeric minority. I had heard this, and I understood it, I suppose, intellectually, but I felt about it the way you feel when someone tells you the earth is 80% water or whatever. And you look at the globe and there's a lot of blue on there, so apparently the earth is 80% water, okay. Because if you do feel like, but if the earth is 80% water, how exactly are we sitting here? And that is how I felt about being a minority. I had heard this, but where they at? Like, how is that possible? And so I think my identity was so solidified in that world that I'm just Black. I'm just a Black person, Southern Black woman. I don't have it's nothing contradictory or complicated about that for me. I got to tell you though, when I moved to Iowa, I was like, oh my God, it's true.
And why did you move to Iowa?
Graduate school.
Oh, okay.
That's only one reason to go to Iowa.
We didn't know, did we?
Wasn't for social life.
So now there's something about the sisterhood and the intellectual legacy of your alma mater and of a Spelman woman. How does that community continue to influence you today?
Well, I mean, Spelman women are, the bunch of them in this room, Spelman women have been everywhere. I lived in Iowa, I lived in Texas, I lived in Illinois, I lived in New Jersey, I lived in Nevada, I lived in Massachusetts. Is that everywhere? I feel like I left somebody out. Oh, in DC. Everywhere I've lived, at every job I've ever had, there have been Spelman women on my job. Every place I've been. So I've always felt like I wasn't alone. Oh, I lived in Arizona. Even when I lived in Arizona, I got sick and I went to a Spelman alumni meeting and I wasn't feeling well. And a woman said, you should go to a doctor. I said, well, I don't know. And she's like, I am a doctor and I will take you. And she went with me. She didn't know me from a can of paint. So I feel like that sisterhood is meaningful and it has, it's followed me my whole life. And I don't think it's unique to Spelman women. I think it's clear, Spelman, because we're a women's college, it's clear. But I think that Black women, I was just talking to an interview about this. I think the Black women have formed communities across many affinity groups, and we take care of each other.
Your writing, your prose feels very intimate and very intentional. Talk to us about your writing process day to day.
When you say it feels intimate, are you saying because this book has a little va-va-voom in it? See, look at you blushing. I write in the morning. I prefer to write in the morning. I say prefer. I used to say I can only write in the morning. I used to say this, but I find that whenever you say I can only write this time, this way, that way, you're setting yourself up for writer's block, because you end up being kind of like what's that elephant? Dumbo. The elephant? Yes. Yes. You know how he thought it was all in the feather, and you can convince yourself that it's not you, that it's setting, it's your typewriter, it's your this or that. So I like to write in the morning simply because I don't need discipline. I don't have to tell anyone no in the morning. There's nobody at 5 in the morning asking me to do anything. It's my time easily. Because I don't have very good self-control, particularly when someone invites me to do something, I want to go. But nobody's inviting me, so that's why I like the morning. But there was a time when I was only writing in the morning, and then when things got off track, there would be this whole rest of this fully usable, juicy day, and I would be like, yeah, but I don't use that time. And so I just forced myself to use the whole day. So I like to write in the morning. I like to write on the typewriter. I like to listen to music. That's what I do.
Do you start with character, a question, or maybe an emotional truth that you're...
It varies. I always tell my students, you start with whatever gets you started. As long as when the book is finished, it seems like you began with character, but you begin with whatever. Like, there's no wrong way to do it. I always say this, the whole book has to be written. So write whatever part you want, the whole thing has to be written. Like I sometimes say, when you were a little child and you had the box of cereal, the Lucky Charms, and your mama would tell you, no, you can't take your spoon and dig in there and get out only the marshmallows. You have to eat the crunchy parts too. But the whole box has to be eaten. So you can, if you want to eat the marshmallows first, write the good parts first. Because a lot of times people say, I have this great idea, but they're trying to lead up to it. Just write the good part. Just write the good part. Write whatever part comes to mind.
How do you know when a novel is finished?
I don't think about the people anymore. People ask me, oh, are you going to have a sequel to this book or that book? But I feel like for me to write a sequel, the characters have to have book level problems. They have to have enough problems to sustain a whole nother book. And I like to think that I leave the people in a good space where they just have regular problems.
Readers often say your books expand empathy. Do you believe that fiction can help us to understand each other in ways that...
Who said that?
I said... Do you believe fiction...
Let me just get comfortable. Okay, what?
We're just having a good time. Do you believe that fiction helps us, the readers, understand each other, a community, in ways that the news and the headlines and all that other stuff cannot?
Well, I think that fiction can. I think that memoir, I think a lot of different ways of engaging. I think anytime we engage honestly and vulnerably, it expands empathy. And it can only expand empathy if you want to expand your empathy. That's the thing, you have to want it. Like if a person does not want to understand, they can read and it won't take them anywhere. But if you want to become more empathetic, I mean, you can find it in all kinds of places. What were we just talking about back there? How many people were all just messed up last week over this monkey? Yes. Yeah, see? Yes, we had empathy. We were worried about the monkey. I woke up this morning and asked somebody, how was the monkey? The monkey is fine, by the way. It's making friends. How many people don't know about the monkey? See, everybody else knows about the monkey.
So you can Google that after we're done.
His name is Punch.
Yes, Punch the monkey.
Yes, but everybody cared. Sorry.
No, this is your conversation.
Every time I talk to anybody about anything now, I'm like, well, what about the monkey?
As a Black woman whose stories reach global audiences, do you ever feel a sense of responsibility with your work, or are you just trying to tell the best story that you can?
I don't know that there's a difference between that. I think
Say more.
Well, I think when you tell the best honest story you can, then you're doing the work. I think if you're honest about what you're doing, then the work is being done. You don't have to aim for like putting a best foot forward. You're just telling the truth, because that is where empathy and growth come from, understanding a true story. And I think writers, I think every human being has an obligation to try to make the world better. And you do whatever it is that God has given you the gift to do, you can use that thing. Now, in 2020, when everything was so terrible, we had a pandemic, 1 million Americans died. We had the police violence. I really question, how much can writing do? People are sick with a respiratory illness. I'm going to give them a book. Like, what am I going to do? Like, what are you going to do for people who are suffering violence? What can a book do? And it did change my understanding and give me a certain humility in my understanding. What's going on?
I think somebody's researching Punch the Monkey.
Oh, I'm nosy. But it did give me a certain question of like, is this all I have to give? Like it made me, I had to go forward with writing with a different kind of humility to say, this book cannot save someone in a hospital. This book cannot help someone that's experiencing state violence. But this book is what I have to give. For whatever reason, this is what God put me to do. So I'm just going to put it out there humbly to do whatever he feels is best for me to do with it. But it was hard because when you're training as a writer, as a young person, they say to you, your book may not change the world, but your book will change the person that changes the world. Like that, like almost like to hype up young people, you have to say that this is the most important thing that can be done, most consequential. I don't believe that to be true anymore. However, I still believe it's what I have, and I have to give it everything I have.
What surprises you about how readers connect to your stories and your work?
It always surprises me when I like a character and other people think they have bad judgment and other things. Sometimes, like when An American Marriage, I went to Ponce City Market, what was that, City Winery? I was just there, and I saw all these women with T-shirts on that had Team and names of different characters. Team Andre, Team Celestial. And I was like, no, we're supposed to be Team everybody. Like, I thought that's what I was surprised that they took sides that hard. And they were surprised that I didn't.
I've read, in researching you and researching things like this, that novels change authors in some way. How did writing this book change you, if at all?
Well, one, I just had to let go of the fact that I'm in charge of the book. I've never been a controlling writer. Like, I never know the end of the book, but I do like to think I know what the book is about. So to have to surrender in that way, that changed me. And also, I think it made me fall in love with this city even more.
I want to build on that. Was there a moment during your process that challenged you emotionally or made you see something differently about family, connection, Spelman, this city?
One thing I realized, it helped me. I think I also wrote this book in some ways out of a place of grief. During 2020, I lost 3 close friends, and it made me, this is a love story of friendship. Friendships are the other love stories in our lives. And our old friends, they carry with them the archive of our entire lives. They have the archives of our hearts. And when you lose an old friend, their memories, there are things about you that they witnessed that will never be seen again. Like, it's gone. And I think so I feel like this book was also my way of processing that grief.
And after living so deeply inside a story like this, how do you step away from it? Or do you?
I feel like when you're done, you're done. Like, when I'm done with the book, I turned it in and it wasn't right. I knew it wasn't right because I kept waking up thinking about the characters. But once I finished, once I had everybody where they were supposed to be, the next night I just went to bed. I didn't wake up thinking about it. I didn't wake up early. I was done. I just know it.
There's the family we're born with, and then the family we choose. And Ken is very much about the family we choose.
You know,
Talk to us about
think
that.
about that. We say the family, like when we say the family, first off, when anybody says, you know, the family you're born with, that already implies that they are a mess, right? No one ever refers to a good family as the family you're born with. But I do think while we cannot choose our biological relatives, we do choose our friends. And friendship is a relationship that we are constantly re-upping on. Like you are constantly renewing your vows to your friend because like society, your family, even if you decide you're going to cut them off, you can't really cut them off. Like they're still, you know, they're still in the mix. Like it's just part of it. But your friends, you do have that right. Like people can end a friendship and it's that. So if you stay in a friendship, it's because you want to, you choose to, you recommit. And that is what I was thinking about, the agency involved in a friendship, because Annie and Vernice, you know, because Vernice becomes like a Southwest Atlanta lady. And Annie is living in Memphis, working in a bar, chasing behind her biological mother, like a lot of things. So their lives are so different, but they have to choose to still be friends with one another, even though people may not approve of their friendship. Because, you know, when you've had a come up like Niecy has had, there are going to be people who say, now those old friends, you need to leave that behind. You're a new person now. And she has to make the decision whether or not she's going to stay true to Annie, who she's known since she was an infant.
Without sharing the answer to that question in your life, how would you answer that question? Because there are probably people in your life that you should have or were told to leave behind.
I mean, sometimes people tell you to cut people loose, and you probably should. But I will say that one thing I've learned since when an American Marriage came out in 2018, you know, it was an Oprah book, it was an Obama book. I moved into like a different kind of level professionally. And I made a conscious decision to continue to nurture my friendships because Pearl said, this moment you're having is but a moment. Your friends have been with you all along the road. And she also said, you got to give people a year or 2 years to lose their minds. They'll come back. You know, so that's what I did. Because, you know, some people got really jealous, or it made them feel like the way, they made them feel like, where did I go wrong that something like this hadn't happened to me? And I just had to be compassionate about that and let them wild out. And then when they came back, I didn't make a big deal of it because you need your friends. And you just have to, somebody said you have to give them a coupon, like a crazy coupon. You're like, ooh, that was a lot. Here's a coupon for when you're ready to come back. And so then when this book was coming out, and I knew the Oprah thing and stuff was coming down the road, what I did was I thought of ways that people could help me so that we could all do this together. So like some of my classmates helped me with my postcarding campaign. You know, I had to sign 23,000 autograph pages. And so I would sign it and my classmate would pull it away. You know, so my mama, I would sign and mama would pull them away. And so I tried to figure out ways that everyone can have a part of this moment because everyone in my life was a part of building this.
You said you and your mother are not, you said your mama's not ready to have a grown woman conversation
She's
with
not
you
that
just
kind of
yet.
person.
What conversations about womanhood are we, in our friend circles, not having enough of?
I don't know, me and my friends, we talk about it all. What you and your friends need to talk about?
We're talking about it all as well.
Yeah, no.
But for the room, for folks who are thinking about, well,
I feel like we talk to our friends. I'm sure my mama talks to her friends. I think the friends are the safe space where we can talk about things. And I also think about this idea of keeping people in your life from a long time ago. People who don't love themselves don't want to be reminded of the past. So they don't want to be around people from the past. But if you love yourself, you want to be around the people who know the whole story.
what are you wanting readers to take away from Ken?
I want my readers to think about the hard work of love. Because we kind of think about if love, like when you love someone, it is a pleasure and a joy, but it is a lot of sacrifice and compromise. And especially in mother love, like especially, I think that Black women are believed to either be extremely, like naturally maternal or just naturally the worst. Like it's like either bottomless sacrifice or totally selfish, right? And I
Trifling, I think, is the word
trifling,
you use.
yes. And so I think that, especially, you think about Black women's history about domestic work and domestic servitude, where your maternal instincts have been hired out. And just think about the performance of maternal love Black women were required to do in these workspaces. And then from there grew that stereotype that, we just naturally know how to take care of babies and want to take care of babies. And I think that when you think something is natural, it makes it seem like there's no work. And so I want to think about the work. And I also want to think about the mothers who fall short and understand that the task that they're falling short in completing, what a big job it was. And maybe they weren't as bad as we thought. I often say that with Black women, people think if you don't do everything, you didn't do anything. And I just kind of want to tease that gray area.
I'm told we have a bit of an opportunity for one question from the audience. Because we've got some books, well, maybe two. Because you've got some books to
but all
sign.
these people came so far. We got to have more than one. How about this? And this is what we're going to do. 3 people ask questions. I'm going to answer them all in like a big extravaganza answer.
Okay, I see. Yes, ma'am. You right there. Yes, ma'am. Please stand so we can hear you clearly. If you can, thank you.
Hello.
Hello. How are you?
I'm sorry. I wanted to talk about your parents and when you were coming up. Usually in our generations, parents sort of discourage creativity and art, and they want you to get a job. And when you be a teacher or a doctor or a teacher or film director.
There's a funeral director in this book.
Did you have those lot of encouragement when you were young, when you started writing? How did you just say, this is Nate?
I'm going to say, I know I said I was going to do something. I'm just going to answer this. Not really. My mama is an economist and my daddy is a political scientist. They read books, but they read books with graphs in them. I've only wanted to be a writer my whole life since I was a child, but I'd never felt like, I don't think anyone thought I could be a writer. I think that when girls, I say this all the time, when girls like to read and they like to write, people think it means you're nice. That's one less thing for your mama to worry about. You're not in these streets. Nobody ever got pregnant in the library. And a librarian, I'm going to say that I know of. And so it wasn't until I got to Spelman, really, that I thought it could be my life. And my mom and daddy were not that into it. They weren't that into it. My mama was like, they wanted me to get a PhD very badly because they have PhDs. And mommy said, if you do not get a PhD, you will spend the rest of your life explaining why you don't have one. And I said, Mommy, I don't think that's true. Mommy, I think it's a lot of people that don't have PhDs. And she said, like who? But they didn't stop me. I went on and did it anyway. They made it very clear they did not think, my mama said it was like getting a degree in creative writing, was like getting a degree in basketball, she said. But they didn't stop me. They're like, go get your basketball degree. And I went and did it. But I think that I always say to people who don't feel encouraged in that way, it's not that your family doesn't believe in you, they don't believe in the world. They don't believe that the world will take care of you. And I also think that when you're not encouraged by your family, it's actually good for you as an artist because you're not writing for their approval. They don't care. They're not paying no attention. You're writing for your own self. And you have to be brave enough to do it anyway. I always imagine like I'm like a bird and I'm in my shell. And if I'm a bird in my shell, it's not helpful for me if someone takes like a spoon and cracks open the shell and lets me out. You have to be strong enough to peck your way out of your own eggshell. So I feel like I'm just in there like, I'm just like doing it. And I got out of my shell and I needed that skill to do the other things I needed to do. And they're all into it now though. Because I believe you know my mama. Listen, my mama has made this book her new religion. Every octogenarian in Southwest Atlanta has been forced to buy this book.
As they should.
She's like, Social Security, whatever, buy it.
Is there a question on this side of the room? Yes, ma'am, I see you. Please stand.
Hi, my name is Joy. I also went to Spelman, and so I just have to say I love that you are a Spelman sister, and so inspiring to see someone be where I walked through and get to the level that you're at today. So I just want to give you your flowers and thank you for the work that you're doing because it's so inspiring. My question is, are there any books or authors that are challenging how you're thinking today?
Well, I will say I have just gotten done writing an introduction to Toni Morrison's Song of Solomon. I revisited it, and I do believe it is a perfect novel. It's the greatest novel ever written, and in English. And I feel like, even in reading that novel, it challenged me in understanding how much a person can do with just one story. It's so interesting because it's about one man's journey to understand his lineage. And in this age of 23andMe, when you can get like this thing and rub your cheek and Skip Gates will tell you who you are. Now with Song of Solomon, Morrison would say, doing this DNA and talking to Skip Gates is not going to tell you who you are. You got to go there. You have to go back to Virginia, to South Carolina, whatever. You got to talk to people and meet people and know who you are. Do not rely on the science because people know things records don't. And that's the thing I've been thinking about a lot.
Last question.
Look at her. Look at her. You heard that authority?
Yes, ma'am,
Yeah.
I see you.
So,
Latanza! Hey, neighbor.
okay, sorry. So those fellow ladies graduates. Okay. All right, so that made me think, though, what's brewing in you for that?
That was the last question. But I still want to write the novel that I was trying to write. I was trying to write about our neighborhood. Me and Latanza live in the most eccentric neighborhood within the city of Atlanta. And I felt like it would be a great basis for a novel. So we live nearby to Grant Park over there. And like there is a green space in the middle of the community. And they got a HOA quorum, because who's coming to the meetings? I'm not coming to the meetings. And they voted to fence in the park to keep children from nearby neighborhoods out. See, so I thought that could be like the beginning, like they're building this fence. And then the whole rest of the book is every chapter will be set in a different house in the neighborhood, not your house, Latanza. and really talk about what modern Atlanta means and this idea that you have a green space in the city and y'all are gonna fence it to keep basically poor black children out in Atlanta. So I thought I would, build it around that. So that's what I want to write, but I have learned not to talk about what I'm going to do because you see what happened last time.
Everyone.
Wait, I got one thing to say, I promise. I always have to say this because I know whenever you have a book event, there are people in the room that want to write a book, that have a story. And you know how people tell you a writer has to write every day? That is not true. I feel like when you tell people they have to write every day, grown people don't have time every day to write because you're busy, you're working, you're raising children, you're doing elder care, you may have taken in grandchildren. There are lots of reasons why you cannot write every day, but the very reason you cannot write every day, that is the material that's enriching your life and giving you something to write about. There are people who have time to write every day, they stay in the house in their pajamas. I am not interested in their pajama book. I want to read your book. So if you're working on a book, just keep at it. You can do it. And there's someone out here that's waiting to read it. That's all. Okay, now we're done.
Thank you so much, Tayari. I got it. And Condace, I'm going to say for dropping the gems and keeping it real. Much appreciated. And we do have a book signing right out there. I guess we need to give you a minute to get out there. And but thank you so much for deepest thanks, your insights, your stories. I started reading American Marriage, and now I know I'm taking up time, but already I hear the voice, I hear your voice. And so thank you for sharing it with everyone, and then we will move out to the book signing. Thank you.